Hey there, so this is a quick video that I'm just recording to talk through a little bit about the work that I've been doing for the last few weeks on the local government digital quality model. Just to be clear, this is very, very early days with this. I've only got as far as version 0.1, which is the very first draft of this model, which is currently being sort of reviewed and improved all the time. So first of all, what actually is local government digital quality model? Well, the idea is that it's going to be an openly licensed, community maintained framework which councils can use to figure out what good looks like in council digital data design technology and all of those kinds of things. They then use it to decide where they're at and where they want to be able to get to. It's based on 5 levels of quality across 10 dimensions, which I'll get to in a bit. But the really important thing here is that not every single council should aim to rate at the highest level on every dimension. All councils need to be realistic about what they can actually achieve given their resources. And this is what the model is all about, really. It's helping councils to become the best that they possibly can be. So it's freely available for use by councils and organisations that are working with councils, and that's why it's been published under this open licence. The hope here is that we can establish a standard around what good looks like for council digital, and by doing that we can only do that by getting as many people to use it as possible, hence the open licence. So it exists, as I said, to help councils figure out what good looks like for their context. It gives them a way as well of planning their improvement, and that's a really important thing about this. It's not just measuring where you're at, it's all about deciding where you want to get to and how are you going to get there. Hopefully, by it becoming a standard, it creates opportunities for 2 things. The first one is benchmarking, so councils can compare their results and where they could be improving and which other councils have done really well in the areas that they're struggling in. And then it creates opportunities for collaboration. So councils that have got great ideas in one area can share those with other councils who might be struggling, and of course, vice versa. Now, it's the whole thing really isn't about getting the highest scores that you possibly can do. It's about facilitating good conversations about digital and what's appropriate for councils and how they can get there. And that's what it's really all about. So, who am I and why am I doing this? So, my name's Dave Briggs. I run a little company called Sensible Tech. I've been working in around local government digital for 15 years or more now, and I'm always being asked questions about what does good look like for councils and things like that. So I thought it was about time I should just write it all down and save everybody a little bit of time. You can find out more about me at my website. There's various links at davebriggs.xyz, or you can always ping me an email on dave@sensibletech.co.uk. It's also important to call out the fact that this is a community maintained project. So I'm supported by the wonderful community of council digital people that have already expressed an interest in this, and they're already helping me by giving me feedback and sharing ideas and things like that. So big thanks to them. If you're enthused about this and you want to find out more, you want to become a part of that community, then if you visit dq.sensibletech.co.uk, you can find out a little bit more about it, and you can also click a link and fill in a form to join in that community, and that will get you access to all of the documents and things that I'm going to be talking about. A little bit more detail. So the levels, they go from passive all the way up to transformative, which is the top level. Now, passive council is one that's very reactive. They don't have very many future plans in place. They don't tend to have much ownership around what's happening with them. Maybe there's not very much knowledge or awareness about what good modern digital practice might look like. Now, as we go up these levels, things improve rather. So a developing council will have developed some of that awareness. They'll probably know or appreciate what good could look like, but maybe they lack the capacity and the capability to actually really sort of make it happen within their organisations. An impactful organisation in this model is one whereby they're actually making some of that stuff happen. They're only able to do it though in certain small areas, perhaps where they've got a fair wind and the conditions are right for a particular service or a particular project, and they've been able to show that this stuff can have a positive impact, but it's limited. A mainstream council is when they're doing all of that stuff, but they're able to do it much more consistently. So it becomes, in effect, the business as usual is doing things in this sort of modern digital way. And then right at the top, there are the transformative councils, and there are, in all seriousness, not going to be very many of these. And it's likely that any one council can only be transformative in certain areas of its operations. But a transformative council is one that takes all of this learning around digital and it applies it to absolutely everything, to the point whereby they're kind of ripping up the old ways of doing things. They're designing new operating models, and they're completely redesigning the way that their organisation works in the digital age. As I said, there's not going to be very many of those, but where they do, it's going to have a terrific amount of impact. Now, those dimensions. So the councils measure themselves on those 5 levels against these 10 dimensions. And they're in 2 groups, really. The first one on the left-hand side are the foundations. The ones on the right-hand side are what I call the practices. And so those foundations are leadership, strategy, culture, decision-making, and capacity. I think they're probably all fairly self-explanatory. And then on the right-hand side, we've got technology, we've got data, we've got experience, and that refers to the digital experience that the council offers. So, if you like, the customer experience, perhaps, of people that are using the website or the online transactions and that kind of thing. Then we've got design, by which we mean user-centered service design, and delivery, by which we mean, the delivery approaches that are taken to actually make projects happen, whether that be agile or waterfall approaches. So how does it kind of work, and what's the model made up of? Well, the model is made up of a guide, which does all of the explaining. It's about sort of 60 slides that I've pulled some out of for this particular presentation, and it goes through and it does all the explaining around how to actually sort of run an assessment using this model and how you should make things happen. There's also, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like in just a moment. But first I want to show some of the other documents. So the other one is the assessment pack, which is what is used when actually assessing a council. Now, it's my idea that, there's loads of different ways that actually this could be done. So councils could self-assess, which is absolutely fine. It smacks a little bit of marking your own homework, but that's okay. I think self-assessment is absolutely fine. Also, there's the concept of peer assessment, where other councils could come in and they could review each other and assess each other and do it in that way. Or it's possible that perhaps you can't find a peer council to be able to do that for you, or there's nobody who feels comfortable doing it internally, in which case you might want to pay for somebody to come and do that for you. Either way, whichever model you approach, the main way in which you'll be scored is by using this assessment pack, and there's no real great innovation here. It's simply a document through which this is the sort of the header sheet where you list the council's name, who's on the assessor team, rate the level that they come out at overall, and provide a bit of commentary around that if you want. And then you also put in what's the target levels, where does the council want to get to after this? Why is that appropriate? And when are you going to come back and reassess to see if that progress has been made? As we go through the assessment pack, we will see that for each of those dimensions, there's an opportunity to put down the score, explain the reasons for that score, and also make a note of any evidence. Now, I'm not expecting this to be a super documentation heavy exercise, but it might be a nice idea in terms of evidence, in terms of putting down perhaps the name of a project, perhaps the name of a particular digital service, or something like that just shows, because we did that, and the impact that it had, that's a great example of the fact that why we're scoring ourselves at this particular level. You then, at this point, for each of the individual dimensions, also want to put in a target score and the reason. And that's the same for all of those dimensions as we're going through. So as I say, it's a very, very simple document. The next one we've got is the calculator, which again is not a very complicated thing. It's simply a single spreadsheet that I've put together here, whereby when you are you've done your assessment, you then put in the various results for each of these dimensions, and then you also decide where you want to target and where you want to go next with some of these things. Now, it might well be that there's a few different areas that you want to be able to target, but I really would, I think, suggest that most councils probably only want to focus on 3 or 4 dimensions perhaps that they want to seek improvement in, because otherwise you're going to be creating yourself an awful lot of work. Anyway, as you're adding in some of these scores and things, the graph on the right hand side just sort of draws you a little bit of a pretty picture around what the various scores are and how they might look. Now, the last element here is a really, really important one, which I think is it's just such a vital part of this whole model, which is the action plan. Because as I said, this is as much about, if not mostly about, improvement, not about where you currently are at. And so I've designed this action plan template. It tries to make things as simple as possible. You fill in the details about the council name, the assessment date, and all of that kind of stuff. You then enter what your current overall level is, which has been calculated for you by the calculator, and where you want to be able to get to next time. I reckon a year is probably a good amount of time to be measuring this stuff, but other councils might decide they need a little bit longer. And then for each one of these, again, taking the details from that assessment pack, you would go through and put in where you are and where you want to get to as we're going through. And as I said earlier, you don't want to be trying to seek improvement or too large an improvement in too many of these different areas. And then as you fill in the action plan, you put in which dimension does it apply to. You then put your action in, give it an owner, target date, how much progress have you made, how confident are you this is actually going to happen. And then during every period that you decide for reporting, you just stick in a quick update there. So again, not exactly rocket science. The other thing though that we've got here, and this is something that I'm currently sort of working on and building up, is the actions library. So this is really going to help organisations, councils put their action plans together. And this is going to be a long list of different actions that you can take depending on which of the dimensions it is that you want to improve. So if you want to improve leadership, for example, maybe you should sign the local digital declaration. If you haven't done so already, that'd be a good place to start. If you want to improve your culture, maybe you want to start a community of practice, or you want to start blogging or something along those lines. If you want to improve your design practice, why not run some user research training and things like that. So as you can see, I'm still working on this. In the further reading column, though, there will be guides in there, hopefully that have already been written that I can just link out to, but which you can then find out actually how to do these things. So hopefully that makes it an awful lot easier for councils to come up with action plans that are really focused and tailored to the things that they need to be able to achieve. And that, again, is hopefully going to be a document that is community maintained. So as councils are using the model and they're running their action plans, they can actually share back some of the actions, some of the ideas that they've got, and they can be added to this library, and it just keeps growing and growing and becoming more and more useful. So that's the fourth element, which is the action plan and the action library, which will help councils to actually sort of fill it in. Now, going back to what's included in the actual guide. So the bulk of the guide is made up of all the dimensions, their assessment criteria, and any supporting material. So I'm just going to show one example of this, which is the one around leadership. So with leadership and with all the other dimensions, there are basically three main slides that cover the detail for you. The first one is an overview, so it just describes what this dimension is and what it means in the context of what we're trying to achieve with this model. So it just sort of sets that context for you. The second slide is the scoring slide, so it just shows those 5 levels, and then it explains what they mean in the context of this particular dimension. So those definitions have been adapted and tweaked to make it clear that how it's appropriate to this particular dimension. And then there's things to consider, and so this is for use by the assessing team. These are prompts that they can use to ask questions and to discuss with the council that's being assessed, you know, some of the things that they need to consider, and ways in which they can maybe tease out some of the detail. Now the important thing is that to note is that this is not a script. Okay, so these are not things that you should just sort of read out and then write down the answers. It's going to be necessary for the assessing team to really understand the culture and the context of the organisation that they're working with, that they're actually assessing, so that they can adapt these if they need to make sure that they're relevant and things and really useful for the assessment process. So in the actual guide, this is the thing that I spent the last few weeks writing up, there are these 3 slides basically for each of those 10 dimensions. And at the moment, the people who are in the community are currently reading through those and providing me with loads of feedback so that we can then move on to produce the next version. I just wanted to talk next a little bit about licensing. So this is quite important for me because I mentioned at the beginning, this is community maintained and it's open licensed. So I've chosen this particular Creative Commons license, which means that you're able to copy and redistribute this material in any way, shape or form. You could even do so commercially. There's no commercial limits to how you might be able to use this, okay? But there are some terms that's attached to that. And those are, you must give appropriate credit to say where this has come from. So you must say that this is this has come out of the work that Sensible Tech's been doing alongside the community that's helping to develop this. You can't claim that this was entirely your own work. There's a no derivatives clause here, which is that actually you can't distribute this model if you've made changes to it yourself. Okay, so you can make changes to it, but if you do, they can only stay within your organisation. You can't then publish that. And I'll talk for a moment why I've chosen that, because it does feel restrictive, but there's a reason why I've done that. And the last one is that you can't then, if you do want to sort of pass this on and publish it and promote it, I mean, that's great, but you can't add any additional restrictions to it after this. You've got to continue sharing it under the same terms that I've shared it here. And I just wanted to say, why have I chosen that particular license? I want to open this up to the greatest possible use, but I want to maintain consistency in its application, hence that no derivatives condition, which aims to limit the number of versions that are in circulation, hopefully to just one, because there's more benefit to everybody if we're using the same model. So rather than making changes individually, if people have ideas on how we can improve it and have feedback on it, then I'd really like them to be able to get in touch with me, preferably via the community, so that any of those changes can be looked at, they can be judged and assessed and discussed, and then they can potentially be rolled into the next release. And that then means that everybody's using the same version of that framework. So that's where we're at with it at the moment. If I just very quickly talk about the next steps. So, as I said, this is version 0.1. It's the very first draft. My plan is that I'm going to be talking to all the members of the community soon and gathering in their feedback. So to catch any obvious howlers in here, and also to make any other tweaks to improve it. That will take us to version 0.2 once that feedback has been implemented in terms of updating the model. And then with that version 0.2, what I'm going to do is, with the members of the community, we're going to run, if you like, a sort of prototype assessment using the model. So we're all going to be in there. We'll probably choose somebody to be our victim or our guinea pig, who we will all then assess, and we'll actually sort of role play it in effect, and just see how we get on, see how it feels, see how it flows, see if it works. All the feedback that we gather then from having run that exercise will then be rolled into the next version, which will be 0.3. And at that point, I think we'll probably be able to stick a beta tag on this, and it will be ready to be used out in the wild, if you like. So what I would hope then at that stage is that we can get some councils, probably who are already members of the community, to actually start using the model to run probably some peer assessments, maybe with some of the other members of the community observing and just seeing how it goes and that kind of thing. And once we've done that, we can then sort of make some updates, and maybe we can make it to the first 1.0 version. That'll be the first kind of production version that can be used. So that's the plan. As I say, this is developing pretty quickly. All of this activity has happened just in the last few weeks, so I'm not expecting it for us to take too much longer. Hopefully early in the new year we'll be reaching that version 1.0 state. And as I say, I'm really, really keen to hear from people, and just to emphasise, if you want to get involved, either ping me an email, dave@sensibletech.co.uk, or have a look at the model website, which is pretty basic. It's still in development, but if you want to get involved, go to dq.sensibletech.co.uk and you'll be able to find out a whole lot more. And hopefully that's been useful, and I really look forward to hearing from people.